The other day I was in Gold's Gym and I got in a discussion with a young bodybuilder, and he mentioned in the conversation that he was interested in building up his thigh muscle mass. So the first question I asked him is, are you doing squats? And he responded by saying, no, I don't do squats because I'm afraid of knee damage. He also mentioned that he was afraid of getting a big butt development or gluteus maximus development. These are common misconceptions about the squat. So I just want to talk about basically the topic of this video is, do you need to do squats to get big legs? Now, I should mention that back in the 70s, when I trained at the original Gold's Gym in Venice, every top bodybuilder did barbell squats. Arnold Schwarzenegger, all of them did squats. Nobody in the gym, when they trained legs, didn't do squats. Now, contrast this with today at Gold's Gym. I don't see a lot of people because I usually go to the gym later at night. But even during the day, the squat bars are, let me put it this way, they're rarely used. It seems like these days, most people do not do squats. They do leg presses and leg extensions, hack squats, but they avoid squats probably for the same reasons that this young bodybuilder does, because of myths and misconceptions about the squat. Now, let's go back to understand why these misconceptions exist. You have to go back in history a little bit. There was a study was published in 1961 in a physical therapy journal, written by a researcher named Dr. Carl Klein, which he said that squats were a very dangerous exercise because it inflicted tremendous compression effects on the joints and ligaments in the knees. This article, which was in an obscure journal, was actually taken up and published in Sports Illustrated, which of course was a famous magazine. I think it still exists. I don't know. These days, I don't know which magazines exist. But anyway, it was published in Sports Illustrated, and it got so much press that some of the branches of the military actually banned squats from the training program of soldiers in the belief that squats would weaken the knees. Unfortunately, Klein's research was based on very, very faulty underpinnings, let's put it this way. It was not really a good study. Subsequent studies over the years actually illustrated the true effects of squats. Now, why would you do squats? You do squats to work the quadriceps, mainly the quadriceps muscles of the frontal thigh. Quadriceps is a general term encompassing 4 different muscles, rectus femoris. I'm not going to name, this is not an anatomy lesson, I won't name all the muscles, but let's just say that squats work the frontal thighs. Now, the big controversy about squats, among the controversy about squats, I'll just talk about them one by one. One of them is that full squats, and what I mean by full squats is where you squat all the way down past parallel, where your butt is like almost touching the ground. Those are very full squats. First of all, I will tell you that type of squat works much more of the gluteus maximus than, let's say, half squats. Half squats are parallel squats where you only go to a 90-degree angle. In other words, where your upper thighs are parallel with the ground, 90 degrees. That's called a half squat. Now, a lot of people figure that, well, because you're going all the way down in a full squat, you must be putting tremendous compression and shearing force on the knees. In point of fact, people don't realize the knees are actually anatomically suited to accept those kind of forces. Again, without going into a lot of scientific anatomy and all that, you could find these type of articles on the internet. So I'm not going to go into it here because this would extend the video to probably about at least an hour. I'm not going to do that. But let's put it this way, and this is a fact. It's hard to believe, but and I'll just give you a straight statement. There is less knee stress when you do full squats than when you do half squats. I mean, it seems unlikely, but that's what all the science studies show. Half squats actually put more stress on the knees than full squats. Now, where can you go wrong doing squats? You can go wrong. There's a couple of mistakes that can be made where you can injure yourself. One of the mistakes is when you do squats, a lot of people, when they use a lot of weight, they would bend all the way forward, almost like they're doing what they call a good morning exercise. When you do that, you're putting tremendous stress on the lumbar muscles of the lower back and the lumbar vertebrae. You can get a serious lower back injury. You don't have to keep your back perfectly straight when you do squats, but you don't want to lean too far forward. Now, I had a problem with that myself because of my body structure. I should tell you right now that I was never really that genetically gifted for bodybuilding except in one area, my thighs. I don't know why, but my thighs were extremely responsive to exercise. I could put 2 inches on my thigh in a month just by adjusting my squat workout. This was years ago when I was much younger. It's a whole different situation today. I'm not going to lie about that. But anyway, the point is that again, like I said, I can put as much. One of the problems that I had, I get a little off track. One of the problems I had was when I did squats with a regular straight bar, I also tended, especially when I used a lot of weight, to lean too far forward. Luckily for me, believe it or not, I was very young. I never got any lower back injury from squats, never. But I was putting a lot of stress on my lower back. All that changed when I started using something called the safety squat bar, which kind of like, it has an attachment where it kind of like rests over your shoulders. It still exists today. But even with a free bar, I regularly use for the regular barbell squat. I usually went up to. I started with my warm up weight was about. Actually, I warmed up with 135. Second set, I did 225 for 20 reps, and then I'd start adding weight each set. I did an average of 5 or 6 sets of squats when I did squats in my heyday, you can say. And with a free bar, with a regular bar, I think I went up to about, the most I've ever used was about 450, 475. But with the advent of the safety squat bar, because I was able to keep my back so much straighter and remove stress on my lower back, it actually almost felt like you were doing a machine, even though you were doing a free weight. Using the safety squat bar, I actually was able to increase my squat poundage. I was able to go to 625 for 5 reps. And when I went to 625 pounds in that exercise, my thighs got gigantic. I mean, I actually had to cut back on it because I don't really have naturally big calves, and I was getting that lollipop look where my thighs were so big, they were making my calves look like I had polio. So I had to actually reduce the weight and do higher reps. Now, when I spoke to, if you look at the photos of the bodybuilders of the past, probably the greatest thigh development ever was a bodybuilder named Tom Platz. And I interviewed Tom Platz when I worked for Joe Weider years ago. And the natural question you would ask Tom Platz is, how did you get those huge thighs? And what he told me was that he actually started training in a powerlifting gym back east. I can't remember. I think it might have been Detroit, or Michigan, somewhere where he lived. It was mostly powerlifters. So he used to do squats, and he did it like everybody else, nothing special. But he had kind of mediocre thigh development. In fact, he sent a picture of himself to Joe Weider and asked Joe Weider's opinion, and the answer he got was, you have a lot of potential, but you need to build up your thighs. Believe it or not, this was said to Tom Platz. So what he did is he started adjusting his thigh routine. He accidentally, just at a lark one day, he decided to do very high reps with squats. So he started doing sets of 50 all the way to 75 reps, using weights anywhere about 300 to 350 pounds. That's when his thighs became humongous. And it turns out the research shows an interesting fact. Your thighs, of all the muscle in the body, your thighs actually respond better to high reps. Now, if you're a power lifter and you have to go for maximum 1 rep, then of course you need to use heavier weights all the time. But if you're a bodybuilder, you want to increase thigh size, believe it or not, you'd be better off doing actual sets of a minimum of 12 reps and up. And I found this to be true for myself, will actually increase thigh size more than doing sets of, let's say, 5, 6, 7 reps. You'll get, the lower reps will make you stronger, but not necessarily bigger thigh mass. You get that from doing the higher reps. And I found this out for myself also. But let's get back to the controversies. So another controversy besides the lower back stress is this idea that doing squats is going to give you a big ass. I wrote an article recently in my Applied Metabolics newsletter about the teachings or the exercise and science principles of a famous trainer back in the 60s named Vince Gironda. And I mentioned that he absolutely was dead set against squats. He did not have squat racks in his gym. His reasoning was that squats gave you a big fat behind, big hips, which he thought was very unaesthetic and very ugly. So he was dead set. Instead of doing squats, Vince recommended certain types of hack squats, specialty hack squats, and sissy squats, and leg extensions. He wasn't big on leg extensions, but mainly hack squats. He thought squats were terrible for that. But what is the truth? Now, Vince was practically a genius when it came to training, but when it came to the squat principle, he was dead wrong. Now, so you'll see people doing heavy squats who have a big butt, but it's not because of the squats. It's only partially because of the squats. The squats definitely, when you do full squats, you're putting a lot of stress on the gluteus maximus, which comprises most of the mass of your behind, your buttocks. On the other hand, how big it gets really depends on genetics. In other words, just doing squats alone is not going to guarantee you get a big ass or big hips. That's a bunch of malarkey. And I'll give you an example. There was a three-time Mr. Olympia named Sergio Oliva, considered one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. He was kind of a nemesis of Arnold Schwarzenegger when they competed together. I saw Sergio Oliva do squats at Gold's Gym when he came out to California. He used a pretty good amount of weight, and this guy had the tiniest hips, no big ass at all. And I even asked him, and he looked at me like I was crazy when I said, "Are you worried about squats giving a big ass?" And he said he had no idea what I was talking about. He says, "I've been doing squats for years." He mentioned that he was an Olympic weightlifter, and one of the Olympic lifts was the snatch, where you kind of lift a weight and drop down to a squat position. Puts a lot of stress on the gluteus maximus. So he did squats for years. I can go on and on and on. So, as far as the big ass controversy, that's more related to, again, genetics. If you have the genetics to have huge butt, you're going to get it anyway. If you do lunges, you're going to get it anyway. And yeah, squats you make them, you'll be a little bit more responsive. If you have the genetics to have large gluteus, they will be responsive to doing full squats. That is true. But for most individuals, it's a myth. It doesn't happen. I myself, I did squats. I still do squats. I don't use the weight I used to use. I never in my life got a big butt from doing squats. As a matter of fact, these days, I wish my butt was a little bit bigger from doing squats. It's kind of atrophied over the years. So that's another story. That's called sarcopenia. I don't want to get into that. But anyway, the point is that the old idea that squats give you a big ass is not true. The one of the two main ligaments in the knee, the posterior cruciate ligament, the anterior cruciate ligament, as long as they're healthy, squats actually strengthen them. They strengthen them, full squats. Now, if you already have a knee problem, you have knee damage, then you got to be careful. It's probably not a good idea to do really deep squats if you already have knee damage. But unfortunately, doing half squats, as I said earlier, parallel squats, they will put a little bit more stress on the knees. So what I would suggest there, if you do squats, you have to do what I do, because I have knee osteoarthritis. I have to use light weight, and I do high reps. I do a couple of sets of squats, and I never do less than 15 to 20 reps on every set. It seems to maintain whatever thigh size I have left. My thighs don't shrink. I admit they don't grow, but at my age, they're not going to grow a lot anyway. But at least I maintain the muscle mass I do have. There's two other mistakes I see when people do squats. One of them is to go down too fast, to descend too fast. As I've mentioned in earlier videos, muscle contractions, there's two main types. Concentric contractions, where you're raising a weight. In a squat, this would be returning to the up position from the bottom. That's a concentric muscle contraction. The other one's the eccentric contraction. In a squat, that would be descending down to the squat position. Eccentric contraction studies show provide more muscle stimulation and produce more muscle strength than concentric contractions. So when you do a squat and you drop all the way down, I see this all the time. People just drop down. First of all, you're putting tremendous shear stress on the knees. That is going to hurt your knees. When you do squats, you have to do it in a very controlled manner. You descend very slowly. You want to probably take 4 to 5 seconds from the standing position to the full squat position, 4 to 5 seconds to lower. You never ever want to drop. Some people like to do squats, what they call bench squats, where they'll squat on a bench to prevent them from going too low. Believe it or not, this again puts more stress on the knees. These people are doing it because they think it prevents stress on these. What they don't realize is, because they're descending to a parallel position, they're putting more stress on the knees when they do box squat. But a big mistake is, I've seen guys or women, they bounce on that bench or box, whatever they literally slam into it. That is sending shear forces all the way up your spine. It's going to cause tremendous damage. Never bounce your butt off a bench or a box. It's very, very bad. So that so let's go back to the original question. Do you need to do squats to get big legs? The obvious answer to that is no. You can get pretty big legs doing, let's say, leg presses, hack squats, and other exercises. I should also add at this time that a lot of guys like to do leg extensions. They will avoid squats because they're afraid of knee damage. You have to do leg extensions. Leg extensions actually are much harder on the knees than any kind of squat. So it's kind of ironic that these guys will do leg extensions and avoid squats. That doesn't make any sense from a scientific point of view. So, you can get big legs from doing stuff like leg presses. There's variations of the squat. There's front squats. Famous bodybuilder Steve Reeves, Mr. America, 1947. He preferred to do front squats because he was also under the impression that back squats with heavy weight would give you a big butt. He had very small butt, very small hips. He was afraid of getting back in those days, they didn't know about this. Contemporary his, John Gremick, who won the Mr. America in 1941, always did heavy squats, did not have a big ass, did not have a big hips. I can go on and on and on. But, there's variations of the squats. I personally believe that, if you look back at bodybuilding history, the bodybuilders with the greatest leg development in bodybuilding history, such as Tom Platz, they were all heavy squatters. When I mean heavy, I mean they did it extensively, not necessarily heavy weight, but they always included squats in their workout. So unless you have knee damage or something like that, I really think that you should include squats, and you should. If you have to, you could do machine squats, but like Smith machine squats. Unfortunately, Smith machine squats also, because of the locked-in position, they tend to put a little bit more stress on the knees than actual free weight squats, and that's something to consider. So if you can do full squats, I say do it. And leg presses do not compare to squats. They're a poor substitute, because if you watch anybody do leg presses, the range of movement that they do, even the guys that do leg presses correctly, where they bring the weight platform all the way down, that still doesn't compare to the range of movement of a barbell squat, a full squat. Doesn't even compare. You're working much more muscle when you do a full squat compared to any type of leg press. Besides which, when I see guys or women in the gym do leg press, the way they do it is a joke. I've mentioned this in previous videos. They're doing like not even quarter leg presses. They're working very little muscle there. They're not going to get much development at all. I've seen guys with stick legs load up the leg press machine with 10 plates on each side and do these like tiny 1/8 movements. And they do this month after month, and they still have stick legs. They never stop to say, why aren't my legs growing? They're not growing because you're not doing the exercise. That's why you're not growing. So, a couple of little fun facts, if you want to call it, about squats. The current world record, as far as I know, in the squat is held by a guy named Jonas Rantanen. He's from Finland, and he squatted in 2011. He squatted 1,268 pounds. I should point out at this juncture that there was a famous Olympic weightlifter and athlete of the 50s and 60s named Paul Anderson, who had prodigious squat strength. I mean, he started squatting when he was like a teenager. This guy could do 1,000-pound squats at the drop of a hat, and 1,268 pounds to Paul Anderson would be almost like baby weight, because this guy could do probably 1,500-pound squats. He's probably the greatest squatter in history. Another great squatter was a famous old-time strongman named Louis Cyr, C-Y-R. I don't know what his records are, but I know he was incredibly strong. He was a French-Canadian strongman. The women's record in the squat was set in 2011 also at 684 pounds, which is amazing for a woman if you think about it. What about body weight squats? Body weight squats, that means doing squats with no weight at all. The record was set in 2007, and some guy did 4,708 reps. Speaking of body weight squats, I remember reading in a book this guy suggested that if you're going to go on an eating binge, like let's say you hit one of those smorgasbords, or all you can eat places, or for some reason you just want to eat a huge quantity of food, he suggested that you do 100 freehand squats. Now he said that when he goes, I can't remember this guy's name. I think the name of the book was the 4-hour workout, something like that. But he said that when he goes to restaurants, he goes in the men's room and in one of the stalls, he before he eats a large meal, he does 100 freehand squats, which I think would be seen as kind of weird by somebody else in the bathroom, seeing some guy do these squats, even with the door closed. I mean, he's hearing this guy do 100 squats. I have a friend of mine, Mike Mahler, who also recommends freehand squats. I think he also recommends 100. There is some science to that, by the way, because if you do 100 freehand squats, you're actually going to exhaust glycogen, which is stored carbohydrate in the legs. So when you do eat, let's say, a junk meal that contains carbohydrate, a lot of that carbohydrate that you eat in the meal, even if you overeat, is going to go towards replenishing that glycogen that you burn off from doing those 100 squats. So there's some method to that madness. I've never done it myself. With my knees, I'm almost afraid to do 100 squats, even without weight. I'm limited in how much weight I can use these days. In fact, the weight I use in squats now, my maximum weight is much less than what I used to use as a warm-up in my bodybuilding heyday. So that's about it for squats. Don't be afraid of squats. If you really want great thighs, do squats. If you feel a little uncomfortable doing the full squat, work up to it. You could start with the parallel squats, but keep in mind, parallel squats are harder on the knees than full squats. Do it easy, use good form, try and keep your back as straight as possible. As far as the bar placement on the neck, if you keep the bar a little lower on the neck, you'll be able to use more weight, but there's too much. Also, there's a tendency with the bar low on the neck to lean forward, which again is going to put a lot of stress on the lumbar vertebrae. So, I kind of keep the bar a little higher on the neck because I want to keep my back straighter. Control your descent. Take about 4 to 5 seconds to go down to the squat position, and that'll protect your knees. Never bounce at the bottom. That will destroy your knees. If you bounce at the bottom, let's say you do full squats and you do a little bouncing move. A lot of people do a little bouncing movement to thrust themselves up. That's a knee destroyer. Never do that. So that's about it for squats. If you want more information on exercise science, nutrition, supplements, fat loss techniques that really work, anti-aging research, hormonal therapy, disease prevention, women's health, the truth about supplements, which ones work, which ones don't. Subscribe today to my Applied Metabolics newsletter. No better source of information anywhere. Nothing on the internet equals it. No blogs, no internet sites. I'm not trying to sell anything other than information with this publication. It's 40 to 50 pages every month, more like a monthly ebook rather than a newsletter. www.appliedmetabolics.com. I guarantee you will learn something every issue, no matter what your level of education is. I incorporate my 55 years of consistent study and learning and experience into this newsletter. Like I say, you won't find it. There's nothing held back. I tell the 100% truth. There's no BS. Again, I'm not trying to sell you anything. You will learn. Subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. If you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. Any breed is great. Including pit bulls. I love pit bulls. They're great. All dogs are great. They're the best friends. They'll cheer you up when you're sad. I mean, when I walk my dogs, that's where I get a lot of my best ideas from my articles when I walk my dog. So you can say my dogs are my co-writers. Anyway, take care. I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care.